and we don't see anybody showing up for anything, right?
Well,
We don't.
because we do.
Yeah, right? Yeah, and so I think that we've turned a corner, and elected officials need to act differently. They need to be different.
Celeste, did you have another question, or?
He has a question, he was,
I
the
just
real
really want to
question
follow
was
up
him.
on,
Yeah.
that was the first, but, okay, so how does a progressive attorney general, how do they deal with, juvenile cases differently than what's being done now?
You don't. That's all the DAs. See, the Attorney General is so much different than the DAs. The DAs really have that criminal prosecutorial directive. Whereas the Attorney General's office, we have, the Office of the Attorney General has a criminal appeals division that helps the DAs on any type of appeals that take place, right?
Yeah.
And there's very, very limited prosecutorial power of the criminal prosecutorial power of the AG's office. So there's really.
Isn't there like civil rights oversight or anything that you can, I mean,
Yeah.
clearly, kids in Denver are being prosecuted way at a higher rate probably.
Yeah.
I'm assuming I don't have the data right from me, but I mean, statistically, of course, younger people who are black and brown are, prosecuted more often than white.
And that's something that I would have to take a look at as the Attorney General. Can I go after these particular judicial districts where there is a massive discrepancy in the way that prosecutions are being held? And so that's a very fair question. As sitting on judiciary, I see that there is a disparate impact that's happening on communities of color when it comes to prosecutions. Now, how do you link all that together? And as the Attorney General, how can you say, you know what, I'm seeing it happen here in the city and county of Denver more so than anywhere else, and this is a civil rights issue or a constitutional law issue, and so how can we balance that out? And I think that becomes more of politics and policy than what it does litigation. And that's where you have to go through your legislature to help you out.
I can't help but mention that as progressive as Boulder County is supposed to be, Boulder, the city, was just caught out as having the highest arrest rate of African Americans in the state.
Yeah.
So as great as we are, we still have that issue, and we could use a progressive AG to address that.
So, what's your name, by the way?
Neil.
Okay, so I've got Celeste, do you still have a question? Alex, and then Neil.
Just a quick one on marijuana. So if you're the Attorney General, February 1st, 2019, and you get a call from Jeff Sessions as U.S. Attorney here in Denver that says this whole marijuana experiment is over, and the Federal Controlled Substances Act preempts the Colorado Constitution and all of our kind of marijuana regulations, what's the state's case there?
I would say, let's talk about the 10th Amendment and let's move forward with battling it out in court.
You think that's viable?
I think that's what we have. And start developing a litigation plan around supporting what the people of the state wanted to put in the Constitution.
And Neil.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the first few minutes, so I'm not sure if this was addressed, but my feeling is that you're a great progressive legislator. Why do you want to be a progressive attorney general?
Because
an aspirational statement, an elevator pitch, or what can you do there that you can't do as a legislator?
Oh, there's a lot that you can do as Attorney General, and primarily you're the front line of protecting people's constitutional rights. We're seeing it with other attorneys general throughout the United States, how they're serving as, if there's any wall that's being built, it's the walls that these attorneys general are building to protect their citizens from the overreach of this federal government. So that's one part of it. You can only do so much as a legislature, because here in the state of Colorado, you're dealing with 99 other people to try to get a bill through 2 chambers. Whereas with the Attorney General, you can do a lot more to effectuate protections for the state of Colorado. The other thing is I think that there needs to be a better balance between the people and industry. Right now, we see an Attorney General's office that highly favors industry, and just take a look at her campaign contributions, and you'll figure that one out real quick. And And I think that the balance needs to be set. I think that the industry, whatever industry is out there, they need to know that there's gonna be an attorney general out there who's gonna fight for the people first and not their industry. And I understand that, the real difficult balance of economics, job creation, things of that nature. I understand that quite well. I've been in the legislature for a while. But at the same time, I don't believe that corporations are people. And corporations and their rights are always subservient to the rights of the people. The Constitution was written for people, not for them. And so the people's rights come first. And that's the kind of attorney general I'm gonna be. And that's why we keep talking about the homeless, is that the homeless community, they're individuals first and foremost, just like everybody else. And their rights are elevated above any type of municipality, above any type of corporation, above any type of business. Their rights come first. And that's how I've always operated as a legislator. Great question, thank you.
Got one more, and then Darren's got a question. So, as a private civil rights lawyer, you've been involved in suing municipalities and governments and government actors when they're violating constitutional rights. Again, bringing us back to, kind of the victim issue that I work in, one of the things that happens to victims of domestic violence is failure of police to protect, failure of police to respond, failure to do their duty to, to issue, to get restraining orders, to enforce restraining orders. And so we've had in Colorado, women murdered when police, just chose not to take seriously the restraining order. Is that something an attorney general could get involved in, instead of having a private attorney using 1983 to sue? That's something an attorney general can do when there's, a municipality that refuses to enforce the laws and protect victims.
That's a really good question. I don't think any attorney general has ever looked at it in that way. I think that it would be about influencing policy through the legislature to try to let's think about this.
We have laws, we just have some municipalities where the police choose not to enforce them.
Yeah,
People die.
well, and then, that becomes a writ of mandamus, or it becomes the one particular part of the statute that you could file against the prosecuting attorney and force them to answer to the judge as to why they're not, doing certain things. But, I've never seen the Office of the Attorney General engage in that way to file, let's say, a writ of mandamus to force an official, a public official, to engage in a particular behavior. So I mean, I guess.
But when they violate the rules and someone gets hurt, so you can sue an industry if the industry violates regulations and poisons our water and our air.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you, on behalf of the citizens, sue a police officer who refuses to enforce the law and protect, a victim who's subsequently beaten or murdered?
Okay, I'm not saying that you could or couldn't. I just think that that hasn't been looked at in that particular way, and I'd be happy to look at it.
And that's part of the discussion, is throwing things that,
Sure.
so we're thinking about.
Right, think outside the box.
Yeah. Couple of things around homelessness. We heard D.A. Garnett, who's very pro-local control on this
Mhm.
issue of dealing with homeless people. And my argument to him has been, that's what gave us separate but equal with the Plessy v. Ferguson case for, nearly 6 decades until we had Brown v. Board of Education, and we ended segregation. And certainly there's a balancing.
Not quite, but.
Right, on paper.
Right, theoretically.
On paper, yeah.
Schools weren't exactly integrated that day.
Even now. But, I'm curious what your response first is to this concern about local control. I think, and the other part of why I wanted to get one last comment from you is, you're running for AG and I want you to win. You're my favorite legislator. I want you in the AG position. And I fear that when people hear this message, even, Boulder Council, some of our members who've supported you, would be leery or nervous. So what do you say to them that says, look, this really is in everybody's best interest, and it's not gonna be a harm to you, or do you have an answer to that?
You know, I'm never gonna be able to alleviate the concerns that they have on the positions that I've taken against, the ordinances here in Boulder. And, you know, I have spoken with, some members of city council and like, man, we love you on everything else, but man, we just are not gonna agree on this issue of the homeless, and that's fine. But if that's gonna be their litmus test, you know, you need to support our right to criminalize the homeless population, well, we're just gonna have to go our separate ways. This isn't about politics for me, guys. It's always about people first. It's not about the party and it's not about politics. And I don't think I've ever seen a line in the sand from Boulder City Council members when it comes to being supportive of each other. But if they did draw that line in the sand saying, you know, we're not gonna support you as AG because you might come after us in your position to get rid of, you know, our ordinance, then so be it. Okay, that's fine. Because it's, you know, how many people do you have on city council?
9 here.
So that's 9 votes, right? But then there's the rest of people in the city and county of Boulder. And that's who I would be going out to look for support. See, you know, politicians are very unique individuals. They think that they're the gatekeepers to their electorate. And in some ways, maybe they are, right? But by and large, you know, people are pretty doggone smart. Voters are pretty savvy. And, well, our kinds of voters are pretty savvy. You know, and there are some who just want to be led around by, you know, by the nose and told what to think. But I think that even some of those individuals are waking up. In fact, I met an individual last night who did vote for 45, and she's very disappointed in her vote. And she has now turned the corner to becoming a Democrat, and she's just hoping that she didn't make a mistake. And, you know, what I told people last night was you know, fairly simple, is that an awful lot of what is happening here in the state of Colorado and the low voter turnout that we've seen over the multiple election cycles is because we don't have leaders who stand up and actually take positions anymore. You know, it's all about how can I best message this, or what is my talking point gonna be? Instead of actually sitting down with people and learning from them, hey, you know, what's going on in your area? And, you know, what can I do to help? And how can you educate me about you know, what's happening in rural or what's happening in urban or suburban communities? And so what I tell people is this: look, you're gonna have a lot of folks coming through here asking you for your vote for the governor's position, office of the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and the Treasurer, the 4 constitutional positions that we have. And what I want you to do, and I want you to put the screws to me on it too, and you know, you guys done a really great job today. What I want you to do is I want you to ask them, where have you been? Where have you been this entire time? You want to run for an office now. Where have you been? Where have you been in my community? Have you ever stood up for anybody? Have you ever been in the fight? And if the answer is no, then tell them to just walk along the way, right? Because if they're not willing to stand up for you when it matters, then they're not gonna stand up for you at all. I mean, what is it Martin Luther King said is that, that, you know, when you don't stand up, you know, I just had the thought just a little bit ago. It's, you know, a leader stands up during times of controversy, right? And that's when you see your leaders, is when they put everything on the line. And when they know that it may not be politically expedient, but they're out there and they do it. We don't have those kinds of leaders anymore. I was a political activist just like you before I became a legislator. I saw it happen in the legislature in 2006 when Democratic-controlled legislature enacted really heinous anti-immigration legislation. And we sat down with those Democrats and said, don't do this. Don't do it. It's going to hurt communities. And they said, well, you know, we're nervous about this whole, you know, anti-immigration fervor, so we think that we need to do something about it too. And then it took myself and Senator Ulibarri and Representative Duran and a few others to come in 2012 and 13 to wipe out most of that. Because we learned that what we already knew is it was bad. But Democrats took that position in 2006 because they were scared. They didn't hold fast, they didn't draw a line. They didn't say, this stops right here and right now. They said, oh, we wanna make sure we keep the House and the Senate, so we're gonna draw this line in the Senate. And guess what? They lost the Senate anyway. And then later on, they lost the House. And so, what's it mean to be a progressive in 2017? It means that you're not afraid of losing your position, you're not afraid of losing your seat, and you're just looking forward to supporting the people. That's what it means to be a progressive in 2017. And that's how I've always operated. They almost took me out in 2014. Republicans almost took me out of my seat. I won by 221 votes. 221. And they said, watch, when Salazar comes back in 2015, he's gonna moderate. Oh no, I charged even harder. I charged even harder. And then I won by 12 points in 2016. Stan, I'm not so certain, is reading the tea leaves very well. People want leaders. That's what they want. They want people who are unafraid. The politics are over.
We want leaders who are human beings, not just lawyers anymore.
Right. And when you lead from a position of humanity, people will come out and vote because now they got something to vote for.
So, about 10 minutes before they're gonna start making announcements over the PA, and then they're gonna send one of the security guards in to tell us where the bathroom is, and then we have to leave.
So what are you gonna do about security guards, Joe?
I don't know.
But we're not.
Let me start calling
we're
other
not-
city
but
council.
But what I do wanna do, and it's interesting that I wanna move the discussion for what time we have, really where we're heading now towards the politics of how do we elect a progressive attorney general, not just, why it's important to have one, but I also wanna invite people, because Joe hasn't done it, so I'm gonna do it for him. Before you leave, if you wanna leave your name and contact information so that you're not just gonna vote for Joe, but you're gonna help him get elected.
Appreciate that.
Let's pass that around. Does anyone have a pen and a piece of paper, or we can use the back of that sign-up sheet for Progressive Coalition? Use the back of that. Use the back of it, so as I wanna help, put on top, I wanna help Joe get elected AG. I'm assuming you're not gonna run all by yourself. You're gonna, I
think
came
I'm gonna
down
have
to
these two
Adams.
opponents.
In terms of you don't wanna, I came down to Adams County and knock on doors for you when you're running for re-election. You're gonna want people, knocking on doors
I
and
need
drumming.
teams, I need teams, and we have a lot of progressive people all across the all across the state willing to help out, but, we need to win the Denver Metro and Boulder areas. And I'm really working those rural areas.
So we're
quite
passing a sheet around for anyone that wants to sign up and be an early supporter of Joe's team?
Yeah, and if you don't, you still need me to come on back and talk with you guys, I'm happy to do that too. I'm a no pressure politician, man. I mean, if you wanna support me, that's great. If you need me to continue talking with you, I'll do that too.
Well, we're gonna have more forum.
Yeah.
This wasn't a candidates forum because
Right.
at this moment, you were the only announced candidate for the Democratic nomination.
I think I'm getting 2 more this week.
Yes.
So let's bring them here. Let's
so
bring
we'll-
them right
Do you know
here.
who they are?
Oh yeah, I know who they are. Yeah. No, I can tell you, sure. It's former CU law dean, Phil Weiser,
That's right.
and then some.
Michael Dougherty.
Michael Dougherty, he called me up just this afternoon saying, I'm thinking about it, I wanna sit down with you on Friday. And as I told Phil Weiser, I said, hey, look, I know that you're a pretty good dean of the CU Law School, but what do you know about Colorado, bud? And I've never seen you anywhere. I put the screws to him like I told you to put the screws to elected officials. Where have you been? When it's really mattered, where have you been? He hasn't been anywhere. So, not knowing Colorado and actually never fighting for anybody, yeah, let's go for it. And Mr. Doherty is a deputy DA out of Jeffco, and And I know that the DA's council is probably asking him to run against me. The DA's council, and I'll be very honest with you, they're very afraid of me running and becoming the Attorney General. I mean, they really see the Attorney General's office as a rubber stamp for them. And I do not see it that way. They will be held to account just like everybody else when I become Attorney General. They do not get any special privileges.
So any other comments, questions? Sure.
What are you seeing in the rural counties and how will you address it? You said you've been around the state of Boulder.
Yeah, water
Are they
issues.
similar, different?
Water issues and health, and of course the economics of living in rural areas. But they're really concerned about healthcare. And we took a vote in the House, it was earlier this week, or maybe it was last week. We took a vote in the House to take over $200 million out of rural hospitals. And I was utterly against that bill, and I voted against it. And I had people trying to, really get me to vote in favor of taking money away from rural hospitals. And so I voted against it. I bucked the establishment and leadership to vote against the bill. They know out there what's happening, at the legislature. Water issues, we had municipalities trying to take water rights away from the farmers and ranchers out in the eastern plains, and I helped kill that bill too. So it's those kinds of that kind of economics that's playing out in the rural areas of healthcare and job creation, water rights, because water rights means farming and ranching, which helps create jobs, which generates an economy. It's those kinds of issues that are really disconcerting for them.
Was the water going to fracking?
No, it was going to the municipalities. Yeah.
So Karen's got a question or comment.
Yeah, so a question about the